part 2 of Art, Death and Spirituality. So you can find this little guy on page 309 of your SciPad. So that red box there is incorrect. It's from last year. So if you have your SciPad, turn to that. Otherwise, here is a summarized version of the questions. You can see the sculpture there on the left. And I imagine it's quite small. I think it's like the size of your forearm or something. Analyze this piece of art carved from mammoth tusk, which is extremely difficult to carve, and then answer the following. Question number 1, what do you notice about the subject of the art? So what is it? Question number 2, what does that tell you about the artist? Okay, we'll cover those first. So pause and think about it, and then come back. So question 1, it seems to be some sort of man-lion or man-bear composite. It's got a human body and then the head of an animal. So what does that tell you about the artist? What can you infer about the creator of the sculpture due to the subject? Well, to combine features of a human and an animal requires very complex thought processes and imagination. So to create something that's half of one thing and half of something else, that requires you to imagine something that doesn't yet exist. And that infers development of the frontal lobe, which is responsible for logical and abstract thought. To construct and carve this shape from hard ivory would have demanded foresight and creativity over a sustained period, so probably months. Like it says, 400 hours of sculpting. And again, that shows incredible foresight. So if I invest this much time into creating the sculpture, this is what I can create. Question number 3 is a little bit deeper. What might this indicate about social structures in the carver's community? So looking at that piece of art, what can you tell about the community that it came from? That sounds really far-fetched, but it's not. We can see that they've dedicated 400 hours at least to creating this sculpture. And to dedicate that amount of time to something so not essential to survival means that someone else in the community was providing for the artist. So someone else was going hunting, foraging, creating camp, cultivating, harvesting, looking out for them basically. So this infers role specialization and efficient separation of tasks and the community working together in a social order, doesn't it? So for someone to spend that long creating a sculpture, they're spending a lot of time not surviving. So someone else is helping them do that. It also shows that the community appreciates this art as a contribution to their group work, which shows an understanding for the value of such things. So a community would not allow someone to sit for 400 hours and bang at a piece of ivory if they didn't appreciate and respect the result. The long-term focus of the carver is on a non-productive task like this suggests the creator had a specialized role in the community, freed from other laborious tasks to focus on their creativity. Ivory would have been a precious material due to scarcity, longevity, and resistance, so the object would have been highly valued. So it shows you that everyone in the community, or at least the majority, value emotionally this piece of art and what it represents to them. The lion's head may have been an indication of status, so whoever it depicts would probably have high rank in the community. So that is a lot of stuff that you can infer not only about the creator but the society they were a part of just by looking at this piece of art. Last example of using artifacts to infer about a community is this here. Now, there's a rather anonymous island located somewhere in Brittany and France called Thiviac, and the island has a number of skeletons and burial sites as well as middens, like you can see up here top right, which are basically pits that were lined with shells and bones and fragments of other things very purposefully. And people have been, studying these sites for years. Now, under the slide for this, these pictures here, I've got heaps of information. Again, it's not essential that you understand kind of what happened to these women and what's going on, but to be able to infer from certain details what it meant. So, for example, we can see these ladies here are called the Ladies of Thiviac, and they are two women around 25 to 35 who were brutally murdered. So the one on the left you can see has an arrow hole above her eye, and they both have severe blunt force trauma to the skull. Then they were placed in a grave together, facing in a particular direction, which was common for many of the burial sites on the island, and they were adorned with necklaces, ringlets on their legs here. They've got bracelets. There were shells and other kind of decorative things around. They were also buried with tools and pots and clay ornaments and other things. And then after being buried, they were then covered with some antlers. So a lot of interesting symbolism there, and a lot of inferences you can make from these details. I think this is also in your SciPad, so you will be exploring this, but basically the east-west orientation of the deceased in this area suggests religious significance. So they're all buried facing the same direction, probably related to the rising or setting of the sun or stars, but that's still symbolic of spirituality. Also burying these women with gifts and jewellery and pots and things like that could suggest one of two things. Either that they respected the dead and had value for, the soul of individuals in the community, and wanted to bury them with, their belongings and other decorative ornaments. So that shows a massive leap from just kind of leaving the deceased in an area to decay, as does actually burying them. But also potentially the idea that they might have required these objects in the afterlife. So giving them the pots and the jewellery and things like this, suggesting that they might have some idea of what happens after death, or that there is a possibility of something happening after death. Last thing I can think of that is of significance here is the antlers, and that suggests that there was a desire to protect these women from scavenging or decay, well, not decay, but scavenging from other predators in the area, again showing respect for the dead, and that shows, a significant leap in endocranial development and the idea of spirituality and things like that. So lots of inferences you can make there. I think that's the last slide I have on art, death and spirituality, but you can do heaps of your own research on this. The SciPad pages are, I think, there's 2 or 3 of them around page 309, Art, Death and Spirituality, so head over and do those. And look at the notes under some of these slides. Again, I talked about most of them, but there's some stuff there if you want. Watch the videos. And yeah, I will set up EP if there is something. So enjoy, and I will see you guys on Monday to continue with the development of language, shelter, and clothing before we move on to dispersal theories, and then that's the end of the unit.